Bienvenidos and welcome to our book talk with our friend and colleague, scholar, community activist, community member, with Gregorio Mora Torres, somebody that has been extremely important to our community and continues to be important to our community, not just for San Jose State, but for the area of San Jose. It is my honor to be able to welcome all of you and those that are with us online via Zoom. Thank you for joining us. It's a full room for those that are online, and I'm wondering how we managed to fill up this huge conference room. So thank you all for coming. I'm so appreciative. And it shows how important this work is that Professor Mora Torres has done. My name is Catherine Blackmore-Reyes. I am the librarian and director of the Africana, Asian American, Chicano, and Native American Studies Center up on the 5th floor. It is my pleasure to welcome you and to host this event. I want to thank the individuals of the library, AV, and media who helped with organizing this event, as well as making the flyer that I think is absolutely beautiful. So I am grateful for the additional help and participation. So we're gonna have this book talk. Professor Mora Torres insists that he wants to talk for an hour. I will try to limit him. I told them they have meters at 5, so we have to cut it so that they have time to go put money in the meter, and if they still want to hear you or buy the book, then they can come back. So that's the plan. We will try to get it end by 10 to 5. For those that are online in the Zoom, if you have any questions, please place it in chat. We will not take any questions live via Zoom. So that's information. So I think I met Professor Mora Torres, and I always call him Mora Torres. I met him, I think, as a young student in Chicano studies. I think I was at UC Davis, and I was coming to San Jose to organize the National Association for Chicana and Chicano Studies conference here in San Jose long ago. And we were meeting in the old library in Walquist, which was in this building, I believe. And that's how I came to meet him, and of course, understand the depth of the importance of his family in the scholarship, in academia, but also in the city of San Jose. So when I arrived here at San Jose, almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago, he was one of the first that I went and I lo saludé allí when they were there in the gym. So we've had a long relationship together, and it's been such a pleasure working with him. And I am so happy to see this work done. You can't imagine how important this work, telling the story of Mexican Americans, of Chicanos, in San Jose, and the contributions that were done in San Jose here. It's an unknown story. It's a beautiful story. It's an important history. So that's enough. So I welcome Dr. Gregorio Mora Torres.
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes. Sabían que le estoy hablando en español, y un tiempo que en el pasado este era un lenguaje prohibido. Por eso me encanta hablar en español. Y esto representa parte de los cambios del movimiento chicano, que demandaba que el establecimiento blanco tenía que respetar la cultura de las poblaciones étnicas de Estados Unidos. Bueno, para comenzar, quiero agradecerle a Kathy. He conocido a Kathy por mucho tiempo, como ella lo ha dicho, y yo creo que le debemos dar un gran aplauso a ella, porque ella es la que mantiene el conocimiento, los archivos. Está muy metida en la recolección de todo el material de las mujeres en las canerías. Y saben que para nosotros los mexicanos, pues las ganaderías eran una parte de la cultura y del trabajo. Y ella se ha encargado de hacer muchas colecciones. Y por eso es la archivista de la historia. Gracias. Bueno, para comenzar, I know, we're going to start, but that's how I was going to get warm. How do you get this going? I need somebody was telling me that they have a pointer. Órale.
Okay.
Okay, this is a photograph that I used from University of Santa Clara in 1972. And there's quite a few people that connect to it. We have a lot of people who participated in this student protest in 72. But in 72, there were a lot of other protests across the Santa Clara Valley for school reforms, not only in elementary, but also high school and even college. Okay? And Consuelo Rodriguez, I think she's here, was one of those people that was involved in this event in 72. She got fired for it eventually, right, Consuelo? So anyway, so she's part of history. Anyway, this photograph was basically, you can use it as a metaphor about the Chicano movement. In the past, people denied Chicanos the right to empowerment. And so that photograph is revealing because it shows Chicanos trying to get into the system and finally taking over by the use of physical force if necessary, but also, and obviously not violent for sure. But this is to me a powerful image of people who want to share in what is part of American society. And that photograph is very revealing. You don't see the faces because a lot of people that participate in the Chicano movement were faceless. There were people all over the Santa Clara Valley. And all of those people have basically disappeared from history. So that's also a symbol of the many, many people who participated in this Chicano movement. But to do that, let's go back a little bit in history. And basically try to correct history a little bit. A lot of people thought that Californians were people that were coming from Spain or they had the connection to Spain. And in reality, if you go back and you look at the history of Mexicanos, it was Mexicanos coming from Sonora and Sinaloa and Chihuahua. And a lot of soldiers that were recruited from even farther deep into Mexico who came to settle the Santa Clara Valley in 1777. And they gave the town or the villa of San Jose de Guadalupe a very Mexican name, Guadalupe. You know, what more Mexican can it be than the Virgen de Guadalupe? So you know, and these people, when they came and settled San Jose in 1777, they basically continue a lot of the traditions of the Franciscan missionaries. They continue the tradition of raising cattle and other types of livestock. They also introduced European crops like wheat, barley, oats, and fruits. Okay? And then these people that came from Mexico also introduced a lot of plants that are native to Mexico, like corn, beans, chiles, nopales. They're all part of this Mexicano California that started in 1777. In time, a lot of these people became ranch owners. And they were, you know, basically doing well in American society until 1848 when the United States took over California. And obviously, the U.S. takeover of California was not a very pleasant experience for Mexicanos because the first thing that happens in any war of conquest was the loss of the properties. You know, all those wonderful ranchos that people had basically disappeared through legal, but often illegal means. Violence was used by American settlers, white settlers, okay? And other times they lost the properties through the use of the legal system. The American judicial system basically turned against Mexicanos, and eventually a lot of them lost the properties legally. Okay? And oftentimes you have people who were Mexicanos who were fighting for the sacred right to protect their properties, and oftentimes they ended up in lynchings. Okay? The other condition was that by 1850, Mexicanos, even though the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo guaranteed citizenship to Mexicanos, U.S. citizenship to Mexicanos, they lost it right away. And so they become politically disempowered. What that means that they had no say in the daily political life of San Jose or Santa Clara Valley. And so only a very small number of Mexicanos, I call them Mexican Californians, were able to keep their lands. And oftentimes, these big ranches that covered, sometimes 10,000 acres ended up landless. Okay, but a few managed to survive and keep their lands. And so they did keep a few small ranchos. The vast majority ended up moving to downtown San Jose, to the old Mexican Pueblo. And you can see in the map, Mexican Pueblo is basically that area between Santa Clara Street, Market Street, San Carlos Street, and the eastern bank of the Guadalupe River. And so for the next 30 years, from 1850 all the way to probably 1890, this would be a place of refuge for Mexicans. It is the only place where they're allowed to speak Spanish. It is the only place where they feel safe from political violence or from regular violence. Okay, and so it is there that they're able to thrive, that they're able to continue their old Mexican ways. It is the place where they can speak Spanish. It is the place where they can smell Mexican food, and in many ways continue the Mexican traditions. I'm gonna jump a little bit ahead, but by 1930, this small community of Mexicanos began to grow because of other factors that I will talk about. And by 1930, it has expanded a little bit farther south from here. Okay. By 1960, it's beginning to take over a lot of what used to be the old Italian town of Goostown. And by 1970, you can see that it's basically taken over the entire Italian community, Goostown. And the reason for that is because a lot of the Italians eventually become more middle class. A lot of them become landowners. They begin to grow, to establish farms and so on. So they moved away. And that's what cleared the way. That area is one of the few places where Mexicans are allowed to live. Up to beginning 1925, there's new laws called redlining that basically keeps Mexicans or Mexicanos from living anywhere else but that neighborhood. Okay, and so you can say it was restrictive, but again, keep in mind that it's the place of sanctuary. Okay. To survive, because they lost their properties, a lot of these people ended up basically becoming workers. So a lot of them are engaged in agriculture. A lot of them moved from San Jose to the old mercury mines in Almaden. This is actually a Mexican town. I keep having Ramon Martinez, PhD, keeps having an argument with me because he likes to call it Spanish town. Okay, and I always call it Mexican town. So we're gonna continue fighting. Anyway, but that's where they go. They become the first industrial working class in the Santa Clara Valley. And they come back to the downtown area because they have relatives over here, okay? A lot of other people end up continue practicing what they always knew, vaqueros, a life of ranching and so on. So they work for Anglo-American ranchers and so on. After 1930, so in 1900, people began to produce all kinds of orchards all over the Santa Clara Valley. So you have, this fantastic collection of, apricot orchards, plum orchards, and so on. And then a lot of vegetables like tomatoes and so on. So and so you have the establishment of canneries all over Santa Clara Valley, and so they're able to work in agriculture, basically working in agriculture most of the time. And like in many other places, you have Mexicanos still trying to fight for a better way of life. They are trying to unionize, and there's already evidence across California that since the early 1900s, you have Mexicans trying to unionize in agriculture. By 1930, there are already Mexican unions also operating in California, okay? And so these people are not submissive Mexicans like people are accustomed to. They're basically people who are fighting to better their lives. They're fighting to protect their rights as citizens, okay? And so, and obviously they want better wages, but all these attempts to organize unions, not only in the Central Valley in Southern California, but also in the Santa Clara, always fail. And the reason for that is because there is this alliance between the powerful growers, the local authorities, and the police. And whenever Mexicans or any other worker goes on strike, and this time, they're always crushed physically by the local police and the local authorities. Okay, so it keeps them, basically oppressed for a long time. And so up to 1960, sorry, very few of the unions, Anglo-American led or Mexican led, end up actually being successful. They all fail. And so you have, this sort of modern pictures, but that could have been the case in 1900. And so you have people using el cortito, and I know that Fernando Zazueta used to have one of those cortitos. This is the way that people used to work here in the Santa Clara Valley when there's a lot of vegetables. El cortito, the short-handled hoe, it's used a lot, and this is the type of work that they're doing. Obviously, they're picking strawberries here, but it could have been any other vegetable that was grown here in Santa Clara Valley. And a lot of Mexicans, basically anglicized the campos, and they used to call them los files, the agricultural fields. So los files. By the 1930s, you begin to see, this is in the Great Depression, but even before the Great Depression, thousands of Mexicans coming from Southern California, from Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and even the Midwest. Okay, a lot of people don't, they don't realize that there's a lot of people coming from places like St. Louis, Omaha, Nebraska, Detroit. I guess they got tired of the cold, and so they come to a warmer climate. And they do come to the Santa Clara Valley by the hundreds, okay? And obviously there's a lot of Mexicanos. Mexican nationals are coming to the United States. I use the word ethnic Mexicans as part of the book because I wanted to realize that all these people that are coming, the migrant farm workers are coming from all these other places, have very unique and distinct experiences. The experience of working in Texas is not the same as working in the Midwest. The culture in New Mexico is quite different from that of Texas. Okay? And they have the people from Southern California who are basically people who are urban dwellers, but who need to find work, and they're coming to California, up to Northern California, because it's a place where they can get better wages. Okay, so all these people that come from different experiences basically ethnic Mexicans. The one thing that they have is that they have a common history, but also a common culture, but their experience of where they grew up is different. And so this is actually a photograph of an old lady in the Santa Clara Valley during the Great Depression. It is a classic photograph that everybody uses. Dorothea, forget her last name, famous photographer from the Great Depression, took this one in the Santa Clara Valley. But this is how the Santa Clara Valley would have looked like up to the 1960s. A lot of prunes. And this would be a typical experience of a Mexican family. Look at, you have sometimes an abuelita, abuelito, mother and father, and all the kids working together, in a common effort to survive. And to me, I think I identify with a lot with this picture because I think it teaches you a lot about family responsibility, but also the fact that you have families working together as a unit. Okay, and so that is a common experience of a lot of Mexicanos in the 1930s. And you can see that you have even kids in the previous photograph. And obviously, a lot of people also used to work in, pitting prunes, cutting them in half and taking the pit out. And obviously, another experience is that people are not familiar with is the fact that a lot of people were living in labor camps all across Santa Clara Valley. And sometimes some other people are living out in the orchards, in the fields, where they had no direct access to clean water. So oftentimes they use water from the ditches for cooking or for washing. And so it is this type of problems that get people to organize and try to set up unions. And so by the 1950s, there's an interesting individual, a guy by the name of Ernesto Galarza. He's a Mexicano from Nayarit. One of the first people to get a PhD. He's a professor. In 1950, he's given the job of trying to organize the thousands and thousands of Mexican farm workers across California. And he spends 10 years organizing and trying to set up strikes. But every time that he tries to organize a strike, the strike is always crushed because the growers who have powerful connections to the U.S. government have decided to illegally use braceros to break strikes. Okay, the bracero agreement between Mexico and the United States very clearly stipulate that under no circumstances would Mexican braceros be allowed to break strikes. And here you have, time and time again, the U.S. government basically ignoring or neglecting this part of the agreement and allowing growers to break strikes by using braceros. So you're pitting one group of poor people against another group of poor people. And so there's some type of a conflict that occurs where a lot of Mexican Americans basically begin to express contempt for the Mexican braceros. Okay. Anyway, the bracero program continued all the way into 1965. After a while, Galarza realized that there's no point in trying to organize strikes. And so he decided to spend more of his time in Congress, in Washington, trying to convince legislators, senators, and House of Representatives members to, get rid of the bracero program. But nobody was listening at this point. And so he eventually retires. Keep in mind that the Santa Clara is unique because he eventually retires in Santa Clara Valley. And he tries to be a part of the Chicano movement. But by this time, he's kind of an older activist. And so he's his ideas are not in cahoots with the ideas of the modern, more radicalized Chicanos. Okay? And so here you have a young Ernesto Galarza. Okay, keep in mind the PhD leader who eventually turns to organizing poor Mexicanos in California. And he's there testifying before Congress, trying to get rid of the Bracero program. After World War II, a lot of Mexicans, ethnic Mexicans, entered the canneries and also the packing house. In the 1940s, there's about 40 canneries and packing houses. The packing houses are smaller than canneries. And the reason is because you have a war going on and you need to feed the troops, okay? And all of a sudden you have a lot of people who disappeared, former workers who have been working in canneries who disappeared because either they're being drafted or they're moving on to the war or to the defense industry across the entire Bay Area. And so there's no one to really take over the work in canneries. And so that opened the door for the first time for Mexicans to come in, ethnic Mexicans. We're talking about people from Texas, Arizona, and so on. And for the first time, they began to get more or less decent salaries. And once they're able to get a good job here, canneries are good jobs, by the way, in Santa Clara Valley, they stay. And so all of a sudden, this Mexican population just explodes. 1940s, 1950s, and continues over to 1960s. And obviously, they're gravitating to the downtown colonia in San Jose. But there's also the other colonias. I wanted to realize that San Jose, the downtown colonia is not the only one. You have colonias in Newark, in Mountain View, Santa Clara, Gilroy, Morgan Hill, and even another town called San Martin, in between Morgan Hill and Gilroy. So they're all over the place, okay? And so they began to settle in these areas. And one of the areas that they moved to is basically a place that they now call Mayfair. The original name for Mayfair was Sal Si Puedes, okay? And Sal Si Puedes was actually established early 1900s by Puerto Ricanos who had gone to Hawaii to pick sugar. And on the way back, they decided to stop in San Jose, and they liked it and they stayed. Well, by 1940, this has become a place where the overflow, where people who don't no longer fit in downtown San Jose are able to move. And so you have the beginning of another large colonia in the east side. Okay? Sal Si Puedes eventually was called Mayfair. Okay? And so, you have a lot of women. Again, these are probably Italian, Portuguese women. But by 1940, most of these people would have been Mexican women. And you can see them, basically this is something that was very popular, or very common, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s when the last of the canners closed down. So this is regular work. And keep in mind that there's a lot of Mexicanos that are moving in. A lot of them are migrants. People that come for summer work and they go back to wherever they come from. Could be Texas, could be Mexico, could be New Mexico, could be Arizona, or it could be down in Southern California. By the 1950s, as the community becomes more established, you have different types of organizations that are beginning to appear. The one that is the most powerful, the largest, is La Comisión Honorífica Mexicana. And from 1940 all the way to 1960, it is the spokes organization for the Mexicano community in San Jose. This is the organization that deals with local authorities, okay? And they're in charge of organizing the Cinco de Mayo, the 16 de Septiembre events. Okay? And for them, what they want to do is make sure that the culture of Mexico, the history of Mexico, survives and thrives in the Santa Clara Valley. And that's the reason why they have a big emphasis on Cinco de Mayo and 16 de Septiembre. By the 1950s, you have a new organization that begins to take, to operate in here in Santa Clara Valley. And this is the CSO, the Community Service Organization. And the main organizer is a guy by the name of Fred Ross, who was responsible for creating the organization in Southern California, and then he's visiting every town in the coast as well as in the Central Valley, trying to establish, chapters of the CSO. Okay, and the idea of the CSO is simple. It's the same ideals of many Mexican American organizations that have been organized since the 1940s, 1920s. And that is the belief that Mexican Americans are now a part of American society. By that, he means that we're now part of the larger Anglo-American society. And so he believes, the CSO, that it is important for Mexican Americans, even Mexican citizens, if they're willing to become to naturalize themselves, to become a part of American society, by accepting the dominant culture. What that means is learn to speak English, pick up all the American traditions, like celebrating the 4th of July, Thanksgiving. Those are the things that makes people Americans. And, the other idea is that you also need to be a member of society. And what they mean a member of society is you need to participate in every facet of American life. So, yeah, go out there and enjoy sports, participate in sports. Go out there and vote. But before that, you need to register to vote. And you also need to run for political office. And a lot of these Mexican American organizations believe that all the racism, the structural discrimination that people suffered, whites are responsible for that, but Mexicanos, ethnic Mexicans are responsible also because they refuse to integrate themselves into the larger society. Okay? And so the CSO is a firm believer in this theory that was taught in every school, the melting pot theory. And the melting pot theory basically says that you are part of American society because everybody here in the United States, with the exception of Native Americans, is a foreigner at one time or another. But what makes them Americans is the fact that the process of time, first, second, third generation, fourth generation, there's a gradual process in which people end up becoming fully American. Okay? And so they encourage their kids. One of the things I always mention is the fact that, in the 1950s, the teachers are giving you Anglo names. So if you're Carlos, you become Charles, and Patricio, you become Patrick. Mary Frances, Maria Francisca. Pancha is no longer acceptable here. Okay? And so you have to become physically American. Cultural American. The other thing that they wanted to do is you have to bring about change through civic action. You can't just go and be a worker and go home and, eat and be with your family. No, you have to go out there and physically participate in the life of America. So they wanted to become a voter. They wanted to consider who are the people who are in for public office and vote for the ones that best represent your interest. And then if you can, run for political office. And so by 1950, you have quite a few Mexican Americans who are actually running for local office, city councils in Santa Clara, Monteview, or San Jose. Okay, so those are the ideas of the CSO. They're also interested in improving your neighborhood. Keep in mind that in the east side, not so much in the downtown area, but in the east side, you have all those people who are living in places that do not have sidewalks, do not have sewers, do not have public lights. And so that's what they want to do, take care of that. A lot of people are living in under substandard houses. They want to change that. Okay. So you got to change life through mass political participation. And one of the people that does a lot of the work is this father McDonnell from Guadalupe Church in South Puedes. One of the people who's pushing the CSO a lot is Eduardo Roybal, who becomes one of the most influential Mexican Americans in American politics. And then obviously you have Fred Ross right there. And if you look at that picture, this is an old one that we have. There's a picture of a young Cesar Chavez, with a little suit, and I think he's got a little mustache. And it's kind of shocking because they will never wear a suit anymore after 1950 when he becomes a farm worker leader. Okay, and so this is a CSO, the local chapter. Okay, so this is what they're trying to do. The problems that Mexican Americans face in the 1950s is basically the fact that there is structural discrimination. And I know a lot of you will not know that what the word means. Okay, but in city government, local government, county government, the local police, the fire department, all of these jobs that are out there are closed to Mexicans. Very few Mexicans are actually allowed to work there. And there's no reason for that. Just, so there's a problem right there. And then if you want to work in the craft unions, like being a welder, electrician, carpenter, you can get into that. Those jobs are reserved for white people. Okay? Obviously, I talked to you about racial segregation, the fact that we live in the barrio, in the colonias, but if you're middle class, you have the money, you can't live in the better places. The middle class where, like the Rose Garden, or for that matter, the area east of San Jose State. Okay? So there is de facto segregation. And then the vast majority of our kids in the 1950s rarely ever go beyond the 6th grade in Santa Clara Valley. Okay? The reason is for teaching. Have teachers that simply are not adequate. A lot of them are schools that are under-equipped. Okay? If you want to go to college, you can't get the college classes that are necessary to get into San Jose State, Santa Clara, Stanford. And so in the 1950s, only a very small number of Chicanos and Chicanos are actually graduating from high school. And even a smaller number are going to San Jose State. You can count them on your hands. And there's practically no health services. If you're living out there in East San Jose and you get sick, all the hospitals on the west side. And at this time, very few people actually have cars. So you have to get yourself a taxi or take public transportation. And it takes you, if you're taking a bus to the west side where the hospitals are, it takes you 2 hours to get there. There are no social services that are out there. Okay, now they want me to move faster. Okay. And so the 1960s began with a new generation of people who are different from the political activists of the 1950s. These people are no longer interested in asking. These people are not demanding change, social, political, and other kinds of reforms. And so they begin to develop this technique called mass community action. Instead of just a little organization that goes out there and tries to negotiate with the city council, with the mayor of San Jose, they're bringing in lots of people. Okay? And so they basically realize, they basically says, we're gonna go out there and we're gonna ask. But if you don't consent, we will demand. And if you don't do that, then we'll take other types of action. Peaceful, non-violent action. Okay? And there's all kinds of problems. You know, they want to improve the lives of everybody in the community. They want to improve the education. Education is the central aim of the Chicano movement. And obviously, they want to participate in every facet of the political life. And so there are two barrios. The downtown barrio, which is big, it goes all the way to, by this time, to Alma Street. Then you have the other barrios on the east side. Well, something happened in the mid-1960s, which basically gutted these barrios. Anybody know what happened? The freeway, 280. Just cut through the middle of the barrio. Led to basically the destruction of the barrios. And this is something that Chicanos found out quickly. You know, we got caught by surprise. Nobody knew that was coming. And so that's when they said that it's time for people to get more organized. That is something that really devastated the community. And so, so I can move on quickly. There are 4 areas that this mass movements participated greatly in. One is Cesar Chavez's buildup of the United Farm Workers. Okay, and this is the Santa Clara Valley, the San Francisco Bay Area, is crucial to the survival of the United Farm Workers. It is here that Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers comes to looking for support for boycotts, food, supplies, and things like that. Okay, and the people that are living in San Jose identify with Cesar Chavez because they had all been farm workers for a long time. They didn't need to be told about the problems of the farm workers. They knew what it was to work in agriculture. Okay, and so you have thousands of people all over the Santa Clara Valley supporting the United Farm Workers in many ways. The Vietnam War also was something that forged the Chicano movement, but it also divided the ethnic Mexican community because there were some conservative Mexican Americans who wanted to be faithful and loyal to the United States. And then the Mexicans who simply got tired of, fighting in a war that was not theirs, in a war that was unfair. At the end of the war, 58,000 people were killed from the United States. 20% of those people were Mexicanos or other Latinos. And that just tells you the unfairness of the system. Why is it that Latinos, who represent no more than 4% in 1970 of the U.S. population, is losing 4 times more than the proportion of the population? And then you have education. And one of the areas is basically universities. There are very few Mexicanos, Latinos going to college in the 1970s. And so that needs to change. Okay? If you're going to Santa Clara College in 70 or San Jose State, you can count the number of Mexicanos with your hands and, not very many. And then other problems is police violence. in the communities. A lot of people are getting killed, are getting harassed and beaten up by the cops. And all of those actions are considered justifiable by the police. And so Mexicanos need to take action there. And then obviously fairness in the courts. There was a case in 1969 in which a judge by the name of Gerald Chargan basically had convicted of kids of, two families of committing some type of a sexual crime in the family. And he actually said, maybe Hitler was right. People like you should be executed. So the crime of one individual basically was applied to everybody. And that was an insult to the Mexicano community. So mass action is necessary. And one of the early people that did that was this guy, this handsome individual from San Jose, James Lake High School, who was, he started at San Jose State in 1958, 59, as a math and physics major. Along the way, he decided to change and become an English major. And this guy came to the El Excentrico magazine and asked the editor, the publisher, for permission to publish articles. And so this guy actually wrote about 6 articles that are angry. He's denouncing all the evils of American society on Mexicans. For the fact that they had been denied a good education, for the fact that they've been exploited, that land had been taken away, okay? And so he's basically come out with all these articles. And obviously there are people in the community that don't like what he's saying because they consider him a kind of a radical, crazy person. But other people are saying, yeah, I agree with him. And I like the way he tells the message because he likes to swear a lot. Okay, a lot of Spanish words, foul language. And in 1965, 64 summer, he goes to Cuba, which is, the peak of the Cold War. He comes back and he actually writes articles for the magazine in which he basically praises the accomplishments of the revolution. And he criticizes American foreign policy, the way America treats the people to the South. And he's denounced by the Mexican-American community. So he's going to go out there and shake, the community. So I see him as one of the early precursors of the Chicano movement. But he's not the only one. San Jose State is going to produce a lot of interesting individuals during this time. So you have Cesar Chavez and Luis after he becomes popular. But you have other people like Fred Hirsch. He's white, but he's been active in the Chicano movement for a very, very long time, since the 1960s. You gotta acknowledge all these people that participate in the Chicano movement. That they don't have to be necessarily Mexicano. And you have other people like Ernia Deitia, Fred Hirsch again, and Jose Carrasco. All people who are locals from San Jose who go and actually work with Cesar Chavez at the time that he's building up, his United Farm Worker Union. But you also have the same thing, a lot of San Jose State kids, a lot of community kids, Vato Locos, who are also going out there and supporting the strike. There's a lot of tabling that goes on. People go out there and be in front of Lucky Stores or Safeway stores, encouraging people not to buy lettuce or to buy grapes. So you have a lot of other locals. Again, these are photographs that were loaned to me by Doctora Martinez. And then you have Tato Urbano from San Jose State again. Don't buy grapes. See, this is the type of organizing that these kids are doing. Another white person that I like and respect a lot is this kid, this guy in the middle, Dan Barker from Santa Clara University, who had the principles of, basically being committed to working with the United Farm Workers. After college, he goes to work as a volunteer at La Paz. And this is the war I was telling you about. Mexicanos from San Jose. This is the guy, Pat Vasquez, who was one of the first Mexicanos from Santa Clara Valley, who was killed in Vietnam in '67. And the father, who was a member of the American JF Forum, basically began to question, the value of fighting in Vietnam. So he's one of those people that's beginning to think, are we doing okay? Are we justified to go to Vietnam? And for that, a lot of other people in the community criticize him. You have Everett Alvarez, the first American pilot to be shot over Vietnam. And again, this is a divisive issue because it divides the community in half. One of the leading Chicanos at this point is a San Jose State student by the name of Delia Alvarez. Eventually, she becomes a very active member of the anti-war movement nationally. Okay, San Jose State. And then you have the walkouts. A lot of people have made, they have made a lot of things about the walkouts in LA, and the high school kids walked out in '68. Nobody talks about the fact that in San Jose State, we actually have a walkout taking place as early as '68. And I think that here you have a young teacher who was working at Roosevelt Junior High School. Should I name you, or you want to raise your hand? What's your name? Okay, Consuelo Rodriguez was one of two Mexicanos, who were teaching. The other one was Jose Carrasco. In '68, these two young teachers led the movement to break out of San Jose State. Out of Roosevelt High School. But there was another woman by the name of Sofia Mendoza, who was a member of United People Arriba, who was telling these people, yes, we need to go out there and move out. Okay? And part of this, has to do with, racist teachers who abuse Mexicano kids, who ridicule them for speaking Spanish, for eating Mexican food. So that's the reason why I said, Spanish, when you start using it, it's a language of protest. It is a language of change, social change. And so you have images of, of other places around California, but it's the same thing in San Jose. You have schools that are going out on strike. Okay? And this picture right here, I just barely found it, is from Overfield High School kids, 1970, who also decided to walk out. It's a guy that has become a friend of mine, who is Mr. Ramon Martinez. When he had hair, and obviously Santa Clara College, University, '72, when basically students decided that, they didn't like the abuse that were going on. At that time, Santa Clara had probably about 25, 30 students that were going to Santa Clara on scholarship in the 4 years. But, so they were taking in about 10 students per year. But there's, the abuse and mistreatment of the students by faculty who didn't think that the kids were deserving to be there. Basically isolate them. And keep in mind that for a lot of these kids, for all of us, it is the first time that we're at college. And that is really something which is new and shocking, and it takes a while before you get used to life in college. Okay? And so people here are demanding basically that, that there's some safeguards that are established to make sure that these kids who are going to Santa Clara College for the first time stay in school. So you need to give them tutorial assistance or whatever, but more important, you have to make sure that they have the money to go there. In 1970s, the university was beginning to cut down on financial aid. So in 72, November 72, about 38 kids decided to take over that building and force Father Terry, the president of the university, to talk to them. But he refused to. He said, okay, we can't take over. Until Father Terry decided to call the cops, the riot squad. And I can tell you this, they ended up going to jail for the first time. You have a lot of shocked parents who say, what? My kids got arrested at Santa Clara University? Shocking. There was a lot of young community activists who formed the Brown Berets, the monitors in Santa Clara Valley. And basically, those are people that are working to make sure that the police are not abusing the rights of Chicanos. And so they will follow them. And the other thing you need to do is that once Chicano realize that, you need to change. Well, people need to realize that they need to run for public office. And so you have all these people like Ernest Adeitia, John Castro, Ron Valdez, and they're running for public office. The problem is that it's virtually impossible for them to win. And the reason for that, and I think there's an article in the San Jose Mercury News today about what happened in Gilroy. The reason why these people couldn't win in San Jose was because at that time they had at-large elections for areas that were coming from the east side or from downtown San Jose. And when you have the entire population of San Jose voting for their own candidates, there's no way that Mexicans are going to get elected. And so that is an issue that city leaders are talking. You need to do something because we need to win. We need to participate. And one of the guys that is running for public office is this guy. To me, I consider him one of the most interesting individuals. Incredibly progressive. And look at the campaign goals. Planning for a peacetime reconversion of society's industries. What he wants to do is to change the defense industry into, something that will help humanity. A public defender to ensure equal justice. A lot of Mexicanos and poor people were getting shafted. Okay, adequate parks and recreation. Okay, the relocation of public housing, and so on. So to me, this is the goals that they want. This is for the first time something that is responding to the needs of the Mexicano Chicano community. But none of these people is going to win because they simply do not have the votes. And so finally, in 72, the Chicano Movement forced or persuaded the other non-white mayor of San Jose, Norm Mineta, to appoint the first Mexican-American to the city council. And he did in 1972, Al Garza. Okay? And so from then on, with Al Garza now in office, they were able to change the way that the elections are conducted. So instead of having a large election, they changed over to district elections. And that basically opened the door for all kinds of Chicanos to run for public office at the school boards initially, eventually city councils, and finally for mayor of San Jose, and the first one was Ron Gonzalez in the, I guess, the early 1990s. Okay, and so that's what these demands are doing. Okay, but there's other people that are beginning to criticize this type of things. There are some people that they said, we need to start moving here. Oh, I need to cut it. Sorry. I'll be quick. And this is really the core of the Chicano movement. This is what distinguishes the Chicano movement from previous political movements. The one thing that these people are pushing for is the return to your ancestral roots. Remember that Mexican Americans are for assimilation and culturation. These people would say, forget that. We've been doing that for the last 200 years. And that has gotten us nowhere. We need to go back to our ancestral roots. And we need to have the power of self-determination. We need to choose for ourselves what we want. Okay? And so some people are actually calling for decolonization. You need to break completely away from Anglo-American society. And the end result is that you now have a Chicano nation of Aztlán. Not everybody believes that, but the idea is there that Chicanos need to be free. And the only way it can be is by simply decolonizing completely, by creating your own nation, Aztlán. You need to return to your indigenous or mestizo roots. And you have to reclaim and promote ancestral culture. So here are some examples of that. Aztlán Nation, the Conquista, culture. Go back to your roots and you can see the Quetzalcoatl snake. This is what artists do, Chicano artists that want to reconnect to their past. So Chicano, not Hispanic, get it right. Mecha, I don't like the way some of the younger generation uses the X. I like Mecha because it's revolutionary. If you look at what you have at the beak, a match that lights revolutions. La unión hace la fuerza. And then in 1970, you have the need to bring all these groups, together. So somebody came up with the idea of a Confederación de la Raza Unida that will work together in unison. Okay? And the idea is that you have all these other issues that, that need to be addressed. And so the idea here is basically to create a Confederación de la Raza Unida. And depending on the issue, you will have different speakers, different leaders that will speak on behalf of the Confederación. So if it's teaching, if it's education reforms, you get a teacher or whatever to take the lead there. If it's employment, you have another committee that will take care of that. Eventually, you have 55 members of la Convención de la Raza Unida. Okay? And so you have all these other issues that you can read. They're fighting to end, to bring about economic reforms, political empowerment, an end to police violence and harassment, judicial abuse. Then you have labor issues, women issues, community health, and so on. So there's all kinds of organizations that want to improve the life of the community. And so eventually you have the first president, Jack Ibarra. Okay. Jack Brito will also become president. These are all people that have a long record of community activism. And then you have a close friend of ours, Jose Carrasco. And then this is a group that is really powerful. It's just a very small group. The CEC, the Chicano Employment Committee. And they decided to force the doors open in the public offices. City Hall, Fire Department, Sheriff's Department, Police Department. They want those doors to be open and then structural discrimination. And they did that by relying on a legal order called consent decrees, where they get the city to agree to, going to court if the issue is not resolved. And so that's how they begin to open the doors to the police department, to the sheriff's department, to the fire department. They didn't want to do it, but they have to do it. And that's what I'm saying, that you have to knock on the door and it's done, then you got to push it open. And so before I go, I want to, I don't want you to realize, I want you to realize that women were involved in every facet of the Chicano movement. And so I just want to leave you with all these images of Sofia Mendoza. To me, she's the mother of the Chicano movement in Santa Clara Valley. Ernestina Garcia. She also became a president of the Confederación. Okay, and there she is. And I like this is my favorite. There's comadres that are never gonna say yes to anything unless they agree to. Okay, and so that's what the book deals with. There's a lot of other issues that I talk about, but this is a synopsis of what I worked on. In a way, it's my lifetime research. So now I feel satisfied that I did what I came to do. Thank you. Yeah. For me.
Okay, so we'll take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Mora. I'm just curious, has there been any information released from the COINTELPRO program on how the FBI got involved in the Chicano movement here in San Jose?
There was probably San Jose police infiltration of the Chicano movement. There could be information. There could be some evidence that perhaps the FBI was involved also in San Jose, but nothing clear. But yes, there were some people that were being harassed, and a lot of people, I'm sure that were trying to radicalize to get people in trouble. And that happened here in Santa Clara Valley, but there's no concrete evidence that ever happened. But the rumors and people know that there was undercovers all over the place.
Okay, I just want to let you know that the book will be on for sale for $35. They're only taking cash or checks, right?
Yeah, cash or checks.
Ándale. Okay.
Did anything in your research mention the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, and COINTELPRO?
Again, that's something that needs to be researched. There is some evidence through the newspapers of people, basically appearing to, radical Chicanos who appear and disappear, and you don't know what happened to them after a while. So that's what I'm saying, that they might be undercover agents trying to create trouble.
I think now we're going backwards with this new administration, and what can we do?
The only answer that I can give you is, I don't like, I think we can do a lot of things through social networking, computers, through networks and things like that. But to me, the answer to all this change was people power. You got to get people into the streets and demand change. You can't rely on city council people. You can't rely on other, Chicano local officials, because they're gonna tell you they represent their people who voted for them, not necessarily Chicanos. So people need to take action on their own and organize mass movements, because there's a lot of issues. I mean, gentrification is a major problem here. A lot of people are being kicked out of San Jose simply because they cannot afford to live in San Jose. And these are people who were born, raised in San Jose, and they can't afford to live here anymore. To me, this is a tragedy.
Can you mention any work of Magdalena Mora, your sister? I know she did a lot of work in Berkeley, but anything that you could share with us?
I have a book. It's in there. There's a lot of people. My sister, Magdalena Mora, was, one of those people that was active. Part of the book deals with CASA. And she was also involved with the cannery workers groups. And so, yeah, there's a lot of women, but like I said, there's a lot of women who were active. And my sister was simply one of those young kids who was inspired by the Chicano movement, by socialism, by the Cuban Revolution, and so on. So she decided that she was going to be an activist, and she was, until she died from cancer. Yes.
Tried to district the city, went door to door trying to sign petitions, and when they kicked out a lot of our signatures, we kind of it failed. But so they were the first group to try to start.
And Camilo de Petro was one of those miembros de la confederación.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the day. We just.
Oh, okay. Question back there. Okay.
I got a loud mouth. I'm okay.
The white people don't hear you.
Okay. Could you please identify the women in your favorite picture there?
The one in the middle is obviously Sofia. The other one is Dolores Huerta, obviously. Esther Medina. Well, I think somebody knows them better than I do. Yes. So these are all women activists from 1960s. There's another woman that I was impressed with, B. Robinson, woman. You know, she was one of those people that decided that women needed to be protected. So there's a lot of other stuff. So a lot of the information is in the book. Obviously, I see that as the beginning of future books in the Chicano movement, Santa Clara Valley. Some people have written to me saying that I didn't cover this and I cover that. Well, the book is already 600 pages. So, and I deliberately decided to leave out cultura, simply because the book on Chicano cultura in Santa Clara Valley needs a book. Anybody else?
One more question.
Thank you, Profe, for telling us about your passion and your research. My question for you is, how multiracial was the Chicano movement?
When I was going to Santa Clara, some of the people that participated in the Frente Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, there were some that were Peruvian, Oscar, I forget his last name. They were Peruvian. There was a guy by the name of Fred Chu, Chinese. My friend Danny Barker. So you know what we thought was that if you're willing to contribute for justice, equality, you know, you don't have to be brown to do that, and you're always welcome.
But to me, I've learned over the years that Chicano doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a person of Mexican ancestry. I've met many people who are not of Mexican ancestry. They have more soul in them, more alpha in them.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody who stayed until the end. I told him I couldn't control the time. Me dijo, no, you can. I'm like, I can only try. Pues I nada más, ¿verdad? No más 15 minutes. Okay. No más 15 minutes. Thank you all for coming. As I said, the book is available, cash or checks, $35. I think we need to do a part 2 so we can cover the other more depth of the 70s. So thank you. Have all a wonderful evening. Buenas noches.